Soulful Sauna, Stories of Self-Mastery. Thank you for joining us. It is you, the viewer, that makes this podcast. Your host, Juliette Noske, and her guests are here to share stories of self-mastery, to inspire you and ignite the power of positive change on your own journey. Thank you for being with us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soulful Sauna podcast, Stories of Self-Mastery. Today we have someone called Mats Larsson, and he certainly has been on a journey. Mats has spent the past 18 years exploring the resources needed to change society to sustainability on a large scale. For example, very large amounts of electricity will be needed to electrify transportation. To drive all UK cars on electricity, power amounting to more than 75 terawatts an hour, or 1/3 of UK power generation, will be needed. In addition, a large investment will be needed in power grids and charging infrastructure. He has written 6 internationally published books on large-scale change to electromobility and a circular economy, starting with Global Energy Transformation in 2009. So for Mats, the journey has definitely been one of self-mastery. And in fact, one of the books I'd like to speak about later is one of the 2 novels that you wrote. So yeah, I think that's fascinating. Welcome, Mats.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juliette.
It's wonderful to have you here. And in fact, let's start with that. So, because I think this is fascinating. I work with young people in schools, and we work with them to connect more with nature so they care about it, so that maybe they want to create amazing activist projects in their community. And one of the things that we speak about is sharing through their passions. And we often speak about, electric cars and things like that. And so you not only wrote books that really talk about it in detail in a more kind of scientific way, but you also wrote some novels so that you could reach people in a different manner. And I think that's so creative and resourceful. Tell us more.
Well, I'd been working with the large-scale transformation and the ideas, the analyses of how much resources will be needed to change society on a large scale to, for example, electromobility. And then I realized that this was quite difficult for people to grasp, and not so many had spent much time pondering these things. So I decided it would be a good idea to write a novel and to make it, well, the topic of the story of the novel, how these 2 characters, the main characters of the novel, were exploring and discussing how our present society had developed, and the different stages of that development, and the forming events, the events that had formed our present society in many ways. And they experience that through a story, through a journey through Europe. They visit the famous places and so on. And that was a way for me to make my conclusions more easier to grasp for people.
Yeah. And how did you come up with that idea? What sparked you to write novels?
Well, I'd written at the time, a couple of books on the subject and a lot of articles and posts on LinkedIn and other social media. And I realized I had to explain this in a more accessible way. And well, I think that was what sparked it. And then I read another novel that started with um, someone coming, visiting a friend, um, a friend of the main character came visiting at night unexpectedly, and I started the first novel in the same way, and then um, I went on to tell the story and how these two people had been acquaintances in their youth or close friends in their youth, and they now took up their friendship once again and started over and went on a trip together and so on.
Mm. So all the information about the history of the culture and the development, did you know all that information, or did you have to go out and research all that information?
No, I used general information and well, big events in the history of Europe, that so things that are mainly available or things that most people know about, and and I spun the story around those. And the reason I did this is because the change to sustainable future really um, is about saving everything that we have built up or that previous generations have built up, and making well making it possible for our society to continue into the future in a sustainable way. It's not it's not something to be taken lightly, and for that reason, I wanted to show and illustrate these ideas through through the through the experiencing of these main characters of some forming events through European history, and illustrate that the society we have today is really the result of the hard work and the well extreme sacrifices that have been made by previous generations in various ways. And we are now on the verge of a development that we need to get to take a strong route towards sustainability, and we really need to take our responsibility seriously in this respect, and do what we need to do in order to create a sustainable future.
Yeah, yeah. And before we get right into depth with the electromobility and the challenges around there, I'd love to know, do you have an interesting sauna story? Because obviously you're there in Sweden.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's one of the homes, I guess, or the birthplace places of the sauna. So yeah, do you have a sauna story?
Yes, I do. We have, well, in Sweden, we see Finland as the country of origin for sauna and sauna culture. And we, but when I was 6 years old, my father built a sauna in our house, and he and I've been using that, and we use that in our family all the time, up until I moved away from home or from my parents, and then I've continued to use saunas as often as possible, and we actually have a sauna here in our house now as well.
Yes, so it really is embedded in your culture, isn't it?
Yes, to a large extent, it's really up in the north. as you probably know, people use wood-fired saunas, and they sit in the sauna, and then they go out in the snow and throw themselves in the snow. And when I was uh, when I was little, we went to a place in northern Sweden where they had a wood-fired sauna, and there was a pool of water outside where you could, well, at zero temperature, and where after the sauna you could go in there and take a very chilling bathe um, in the pool. So I think up in the north of Sweden, there is even more culture to saunas than here.
Yeah, fantastic. So, can you tell me, so that we can get to know you a bit more, what's a crazy but true fact about you?
Wow, yes. I don't know if it's so much about me, but it's true, crazy but true fact about southern Sweden at present. And well, just one thing that has happened here in the past few years is that wolves have migrated from northern Sweden and central Sweden down to this more densely populated area in southern Sweden. So we have, say, 15 wolves in the southernmost part of Sweden now, a number of families, and one of these families sometimes visit this area where I live, and they actually sometimes are outside our garden on the other side of the stream that's running past our garden. So I've started to find it a little it's feeling a little dangerous, even though we know that wolves don't normally attack um, humans. It still feels a bit dangerous to go running. I like to run, like 10 kilometers or something like that, and it doesn't feel safe anymore to go running in the forest. So I've instead started to run in our village here, and it's it feels much better, especially since I often run at night or in the evening, and so having the wolves here it really feels like a threat to some extent, even though we shouldn't see it as like that, but it's it's well, a little scary.
Yeah. And so you've seen them across the river. Is that quite close?
It's a very narrow stream. It's just a few meters wide. So and I haven't seen them as myself, but there were some hunters just 50 yards from our house who had seen the wolves over there. So they've been really close, and we think one of them was in our garden and took a bird, because we saw a bird there that was quite a big one that was torn to pieces in a way that few other smaller animals would have been able to do. So we thought probably that it must have been a wolf that had done it.
Yeah, wow. No, I don't think I would want to run at night if that was the case. I'm sure. So
No.
yeah. So obviously on this journey you have experienced a lot of learning and growth with your journey here. But can you remember when your journey of self-mastery began? Was there a pivotal moment in your life?
I don't know. I've been interested in developing myself since I was quite young, and I started to read books on philosophy and well, different tools for self-development already when I was in my 20s, early 20s probably, and I just I don't think there was a pivotal moment. It was more a feeling that I wanted to explore my own potential, and I wanted to know more, or try to well, be both be a good person and become a person successful at what I would do in my life. So I wanted to build my abilities in various ways.
Yeah. And so what is your background? So from being that young person who was interested in developing themselves, what did you get into, like, from school and college?
I went to university. I studied English there. I studied business, international business administration. And studied German as well. So I'm very interested in languages and also in business and economics. I'm also interested in literature. So with the English studies and German studies, I studied English and American literature. Read read some Shakespeare and some other classic authors, playwrights.
Yeah. And when was it that you first got into the work that you're currently in relation to electromobility?
Well, I started working as a consultant, business consultant in 1990, and I worked with the analyzing markets and market growth and developing business strategies for large companies in different industries, and those experiences and well, that knowledge of how to do in-depth analysis of development in various ways have been important in my effort to understand well, the development of electromobility and the circular economy and so on. So I started there with that in 1990, but I didn't embark on this path of development of well, exploring the large-scale aspects of electromobility until 2005, 2006. I read some books on the peak in oil production and the risk that oil production would start to decrease. And I realized then that if we want to have transport systems, then cost-effective transport systems in the future as well, we need to change from petrol and diesel cars and lorries, etc., to electric cars. I quickly realized that electricity was the only alternative. It's the only fuel that can be produced in large enough volumes to make it possible to run our entire car and fleets of heavy vehicles on that fuel.
What was it that sparked your desire to start your depth in research and realize that, you know, what was going on wasn't going to work because maybe time was going by? sorry, they wanted it done in such a short amount of time that the infrastructure wasn't going to be there.
Yes, that is a conclusion I've come to through the analysis, and these decisions to ban the sales of fossil fuel cars of new fossil fuel cars from 2030 first in the UK, and then to changing it to 2035, making the similar decision for the EU. That those decisions were made only in the past few years, but when I started my exploration of this, there wasn't that much interest at all, and I said that if already at the beginning of my studies in 2006, I said and wrote in my books that we need to start early, because it will take decades to change transport systems. It's not only a matter of changing cars and getting people to buy electric cars and installing some charging posts. It's also a matter of making sure that we have enough power generation capacity and enough capacity of power grids to be able to charge all cars, all lorries, all buses eventually on a daily basis, wherever vehicles may be. So, and that I realized that this is a really tall order. I mean, it's not something that countries can do in only a decade and hope to succeed, because there is uh, so much investment that needs to be done, so that it's the sheer amount of investments will need to be well phased over a longer period of time and over several decades in order to be possible.
Yeah. So if we create an image, for example, of a person going on holiday in their car from the very south of England up to Scotland in an electric car, for example, what so if they have, you know, just your average electric car, how long would they be able to drive without needing to charge? And when they charge, how long will they need to wait around? Because I was speaking about this to somebody who has an electric car, and they were explaining to me that, you know, there's only a certain amount of time that you can drive, obviously, before it has to be charged. And it's not like you can drive through the night and, you know, keep going, because yeah, it needs to be plugged in and charged. And so so yeah, if someone was doing a journey like that, maybe 10 hours or more, or how would that work at the moment?
Normally, I'd say you need to charge every 2 hours. If you have a normal size battery, you can't drive until the battery is totally empty, because you need some capacity left if you don't find a free charger immediately, and it's also not very good for the battery to discharge below 20%. It's also not recommended to charge the battery above 80%. So you have only this 60% of the battery capacity that can be used when you are charging normally. So, but if you're going on a long journey, you may want to charge it fully, but you still can't well, drive until it's completely empty. So say you could drive perhaps 200 miles on one charging, and a little more perhaps, and then you'd need to charge, and you'd get um, and then you depending on the speed of charging, the speed of the charger that you happen to find there, it would take perhaps 20 minutes, 15 minutes to charge it. If you find a fast charger or a supercharger, it could be done more rapidly than that. Also, if you have really fast chargers, and if your car is able to receive well, charging at a very high capacity. But it, if we look at the situation now, when only a small share of all cars are electric, and there's really not a big problem charging, and the demand for electricity doesn't have any major impact on the on power grids. That you have about 5% of the cars in the UK are electric, and almost half of those are hybrids with very small batteries. So in the future, when all cars, or a large share of all cars, are electric, it will be difficult to, I believe, to allow a lot of people to charge at extremely high speeds, because it really puts a high load on power grids. So it will be better and less expensive to expand the capacity for fast charging, but not at these really high speeds. So there are a lot of things that need to be considered. But at present, we can say you can drive 200, 250 miles on one charging, and you can expect to need 20 minutes for your vehicle to be charged each time.
That's not quite as bad as I was imagining it. I was thinking that, you know, if you were traveling 10 hours to somewhere in Scotland, then you might have to stop 5 times on the journey, but I think maybe 3 times you'd have to stop.
Yes. If you're going to John O'Groats, you'd have to stop more. But if you're going to Glasgow or Edinburgh, not so many times.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Another question I have, which I also speak about sometimes with the young people that I work with, is the recycling of batteries, because my limited knowledge, you know, my basic limited knowledge is that batteries are very complicated because they have a lot of different materials that they're made out of that are all together. And so when you're recycling them, the challenge is that you have all these different materials which are already kind of joined up together. And normally when you recycle, you want things separate. We know from our like separate bins, you want the materials separate. So can you tell me about that? Do you have any information that would be useful for us?
Yes, there are several different ways to recycle batteries available. The most common at present, or the most researched, I think, is the chemical recycling of batteries, which is well, it's using chemicals and chemical processes to recycle them. That is, however, rather energy intensive. In a project we ran for 3 years, a couple of years back, there was a Polish university present as a partner in the project, and they developed a mechanical technology for for recycling of lithium-ion batteries. So and that basically freezing the battery down to very low temperature, and then crushing the battery using various pieces of machinery to very small fragments, and then you can sort these fragments in different fractions, so that you can get the different materials in different piles, so to speak, and you can recycle each of these different materials, well, based on their usage, whatever you'd like to use them for, and so on. So there are technologies, but there are not enough batteries at present that need to be recycled, because most of the electric cars are not old enough to have batteries that need to be recycled. So it's primarily small numbers of cars that were made 10, 15 years back, or cars that have been in accidents, or with batteries damaged and so on, that at present need to be have their batteries recycled.
Mm.
So
On
in
average,
the future,
on average, how long will a battery last with a car?
they last much longer than people thought at the beginning, when electric cars were introduced. I'm on my second electric car, and the first one we had for 5 years, and I didn't see any degradation of the battery capacity during that period. So I can't tell for sure, but a couple of years ago, people thought that batteries would last perhaps 10 years, something like that. But it seems they can last much longer than that.
That's great.
Yes, really, it's one of the good aspects of the good surprises you get.
Yeah. And coming back to the infrastructure for charging, then, do you cover that in your most recent book?
Yes. Well, I write a bit about that to a large extent, and it's really a challenge to expand charging infrastructure and make sure that we have the capacity everywhere to charge cars.
What are the key challenges?
Well, the key challenges are that the when all cars, or most cars, are electric, and they are fully electric, we will need to charge cars all the time, and all cars will need to charge. So regardless of where a car will be parked at night, there will need to be a charger or an opportunity to charge them. And at present, as you know, many cars are parked along the curbside, along in car parks where people don't have a dedicated place where they can charge every night, or whenever they park their car. So in order for charging not to be a burden on people and need to change their lifestyles and go out 2 times every night to first move their car to charger at 8 and then come back and move it back again to another to their regular parking space, there will need to be ubiquitous opportunities to charge, so that regardless of where you park, you'll be able to charge. And that will not be this high-speed charging that was we were speaking about earlier, but normal speed charging where you can charge over a couple of hours overnight, and that will be a big challenge to secure that everyone will be able to access a charger every time they need to charge. It will be a challenge also to for utilities to be able to manage charging, control charging, so that not all cars are charged immediately when the driver plugs them into the system. And in order to do that, cars need to be identified through some type of digital identification number, so that the utility can decide, now we charge that car, and that car. When they are finished charging, we charge instead that car, and that car, and so on throughout the night or throughout the day. So it's that type of control will be require huge investment as well. It's really there are different types of solutions, but not so many people are, decision makers, administrators, are aware of these issues and these situations that will arise when we get a large share of electric vehicles. There are, for example, electric roads that can be used, or the opportunity to build electric roads that can be used, where cars can charge when they are driving along the road. There will be electric tracks in road surfaces so that you can actually charge while driving. But in order to build such systems of electric roads from, say, southern Brighton up to northern Scotland, there will be a need for, it will take, say, more than a decade for these construction projects to be completed. So there's a big need for quick decisions and a build-up of knowledge about these things, so that people can so that we can make efficient and user-friendly systems available where they will be needed in a few years' time.
Yeah, I'm really starting to see and feel the enormity of it as you speak, and I find that is quite often the case where decision makers don't necessarily have the whole picture, and sometimes they can be very far away from the real kind of like what's happening on the ground. And I guess, you know, as a decision maker, sometimes it's not easy necessarily to get all of that information, but obviously it's very important. So I hope that, you know, with this, your message starts to reach them so that they can really, you know, it seems like you've been doing a lot of useful research that would be really useful for them.
Yes, thank you. Can I just mention that
yes,
people in general, we think of electricity as two holes in the wall, and whenever you plug something in, there's electricity for you, and it's no problem getting enough electricity. But the situation with a large number of electric cars, you have 32 million cars in the UK, and each one of them will need on average something like 2,500 to 3,000 kilowatt hours of electricity to drive the average distance driven. That means that the demand for electricity will increase much more than most decision makers or administrators realize. business people, politicians, and so on. They need to get their head around these figures, get their heads around these figures, so that they really grasp the magnitude of this development and the investment programs that need to be set in motion in order to facilitate the growth of electric car.
Yeah, yeah. And so have you had the chance of speaking to any decision makers or getting your message across to any?
Yes, not so recently. It's difficult to reach the big movers and shakers, as you may expect. It's I in 2012, when I had only written one book about this, but I still had most of the things I'm telling you now were clear to me at that point as well. Although I've developed in more detail since then. I had some meetings with a Swedish member of parliament, and we wrote a motion together for the Swedish parliament that was turned down, of course, but we had really good discussions then, and it was the biggest party, but it was the opposition at the time, so they were interested in putting forward motions that would well show some activity in these innovative areas, and so that was one effort. And I've been in contact with more of his later colleagues, the people responsible for energy policies, but I haven't managed to get through to the ministers or to the big decision makers. I also, when I started this, I wrote letters to ask people to for me to interview them, and I wrote one to Leif Johansson, who was then the CEO of Volvo Truck, and he answered very politely, and he suggested I'd meet with a couple of his deputy or a couple of his vice presidents and so on. And I had a very good meetings with them as well. And these conversations with different representatives of different companies and so on formed the basis of what I've written in the books. I've done hundreds of interviews and had hundreds of conversations with people in utilities, in transport companies, in auto manufacturers, with politicians and so on. But there is not one or a few people who make these decisions. So even if you meet a number of them at different points in time, it's very difficult to influence the direction the development is taking.
If there was one person or a group of people or a place that you like could really get through to or speak to, who or where or what would that be?
Yes, that's a really good question. I'd like to speak to some of the transport ministers in Europe, perhaps the prime ministers as well, in some of the leading countries. That would be a dream come true. It's like, or of course, CEOs of some of the large companies involved in automotive industry, like Volkswagen or Mercedes or Volvo, Scania, some of those, and that would be really great.
Yeah. And what would be the first thing that you would say to them?
Wow, I'd say that it's um, the plans or the decisions that have been made to ban the sales of new petrol and diesel cars from 2035 in the UK and in the EU, they are far too ambitious, and no country will be able to expand power generation rapid enough or do the investments that will be necessary in the expansion of power grids or charging infrastructure. So we need to take a step back and analyze what needs to be done and make plans that are really based on a detailed knowledge of what will be required in order to actually build sustainable systems for electric vehicles in the future.
And I've only met you a few times. We met in a networking event, and you seem like a very intelligent, powerful, interesting man. However, are you just like everyone else? Do you have those challenging moments? What have been your challenges on your self-mastery journey?
Yes, definitely. I'm very normal in that respect. I in the first few years when I started doing this, I was the only person who was interested in the large scale change to electromobility or to renewable fuels, and what would need to be involved in that change. So I constantly had to remind myself of the train of thought that had led me to the conclusions I'd made, that large scale change programs will be needed, and that these changes need to be planned and prepared in much more detail than is true at present. So I constantly had the thought in my head that, oh, have I really come to the right conclusion? Will this really be necessary? And then I had to reiterate the line of thinking that I've been through and the reasoning I'd written in my first books about this, and to really say, yes, I come to the same conclusion now once more, and it must be correct. I can go on and continue to push forward these arguments.
It sounds like you were coaching yourself through your own self-doubts there.
Yes, I'm I'm no different from other people in that respect, and these doubts that that I mean, I think people are really very dependent on the social exchange with other people for the maintenance and the development of our ideas. And if you have ideas that are really different from the ideas that most other people have, other people think this will not be a problem. It will be easy to change. We just people can just buy more electric cars, and there will be no challenges on the way. If you have some ideas that are really different and you say, no, that won't be possible, I at least had to remind myself all the time that my ideas were based on a sound reasoning.
So it sounds like you're quite a pioneer in this work.
Well, if you're are if you're allowed to say that about yourself, or if I may, I can say yes. I hope you're right, Juliette. Uh, I think I am something of a pioneer, and then others have to judge whether that's correct or not. But I have done things that no other person has done in this particular area.
Yeah. And if you had some tips for people out there on their own self-mastery journey, in whatever their expression is of their self, of their essence, and they're maybe facing different challenges, what would be the advice that you would give them?
Yes. First, I'd say be careful and explore the area that you are going into, and make sure that what you are endeavoring to do is could be realistic. You could do a lot of things, but um, will you be able to take on the challenges, and will it actually be possible even to do it from a financial or resource perspective, or from a personal stamina perspective? Then if you have made up your mind, go for it, and learn along the way, take in the views of other people. By all means, listen, consider, adjust your path, but go forward and continue to do what it may be that whatever it may be that pushes you forward.
Yeah. So that's a bit like in SMART goals. If you look at doing SMART goals, so the R meaning realistic, and checking whether it is, whether it's something that is possible, and whether it can actually happen.
Yes, absolutely. That's necessary all the time to make sure that what you do is realistic. I mean, people do extreme things. I saw yesterday a film about a lady who drove camels across Australia.
Yeah.
That's a really extraordinary effort. I saw another. Well, there was a talk show on Swedish television yesterday showing biking, bicycling tournaments where um, contestants were jumping off high cliffs and landing with their bicycles on 15 meters lower, and continuing on very narrow paths across the Rocky Mountains. So I realize, of course, that a lot of people, a lot of things that people don't think would be possible are possible, and you just need to set your mind to do it. But it's important that you also are in contact with your inner resources and your physical resources, so that you adjust and you make sure that and you learn from experiences, so that you really have a realistic vision of what you actually prepared to do, and what what you can achieve as a person.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question, was about the possibility of magic and miracles, because it's like you say, I have seen that film where the woman drives across the desert with the camels, and I've seen other such programs where you just, I'm in awe of what they're doing, and it seems like maybe someone else might think it as impossible, but that person has actually created it as their reality. So when we talk about the R in the SMART goals for making sure it's realistic, it, like everything, comes with a pinch of salt, because as you say, something that someone might first see as impossible actually it can become a reality. So it's not like you have to be stuck in everything that is kind of safe and you know, just within this small limitation. When we're talking about realistic, we're just talking about that it's grounded in the fact that, like you say, as a human being, you have those resources within you, or you can go and get them from around you. So yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's there is so much that that can be done, and so many things that need to be done. But we also, even though we want to pursue our individual paths, it's also important that to realize that in order to achieve these big changes that we need to achieve as a society, we need to organize and we need to join together. And I often experience that people want to, well, or in different ways, focus on doing their own thing. But in order to change to electromobility, hundreds of thousands of people will need to participate in various projects on the local, regional, and national and international arena. And we need to be able to finance those activities in the way that the Apollo program was financed in the 1960s, that took the first person to the moon and back. And to achieve that, the 400,000 Americans had to be involved in the Apollo program from start to finish. And we're looking at similar numbers here, perhaps even larger numbers, because so many things need to be done in so many places and in so many areas of development, that a large number of people will need to join and to learn about these things. But that process has almost not even started, because people think it's just a matter of the EU or the UK government making these high-level decisions. But now it needs to be, now the systems need to be put in place that can actually facilitate this change.
Yeah. And do you have your book there? So your book is called How Building the Future Really Works.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's here.
Fantastic.
So
And we're
it
going
was
to have a
published.
link for that in the blurb as well.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was published in September, and it's only a month old now, so it's
Yeah.
really a new appearance.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to reading it in more detail. And with this book, you really explain a lot of the ideas that you've spoken about. But I would say that it's easy for most people to kind of get their head around, I would think.
Yes, I've had very favorable reviews of the book, and
Yeah.
some of them say that I make um, complex a complex subject very accessible and easy to understand uh, through the way I explain it. So it's really a book written for people in general who want to know more about how we need to work in countries and in companies and, well, in the public sector as well, in order to create the future and to create the society that will be able to take us into the future in a sustainable way.
Yeah, and I think that word sustainable is very important. I know that from studying business a little bit, that when companies grow and expand, when that growth happens rapidly, it can break the business, just like, you know, this situation with electromobility. If it grows too rapidly, it's almost that infrastructure cannot be created, and therefore the sustainability of it also is hard. But so I guess it's really important for us now in this moment where we're starting to build that infrastructure so that we can actually make it something that is sustainable, that is embedded in a really good and healthy way for everyone. And yeah, so bringing it down into our communities, into our different villages and towns, and making it last.
Absolutely. There are so many challenges that need to be taken on, and we need to train people to take on these challenges. We need to find the financing to do all these investments, and so on and so on. So it's there are so many things that need to be done in order to make a reality, turn these plans, these great plans, into reality.
Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned that is not actually in the book is this theme called Built to Last. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, it's actually there is not only a need for more people to learn about these things. We need people who can lead this development, and to really understand and to build the society of the future, and organize these different change processes. In the book Built to Last, the authors illustrate their argument by saying that there are clock builders and there are time tellers, and many people are, and many people who discuss sustainability are more like time tellers. They can say we need to change transport systems, but there is also a need for the clock builders, the ones who are able to lead the design and building of the new transport systems and the new society, and not only the transport systems, but on the power systems and these. So people need to be more people need to learn, and also to become clock builders and become the ones who lead this process.
And I think that's a great note to finish on.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, so really lovely to speak to you, Matt. I'm sure we could speak for much longer on this subject. There's so much to learn about. I feel like I'm right at the beginning of that journey, but I have really enjoyed I've really enjoyed speaking to you and meeting with you, and hoping to put your message out there and really share it with a lot more people. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Juliette, for inviting me. It's been really a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
And I hope many will listen.
Yes,
I hope many
they
will listen.
Thank you to Matt and Ken at Thermalux UK for offering their saunas as a space for me to record my podcast in. Soulful Saunas, stories of self-mastery.